Stutthof was the first concentration camp established on occupied territory. The Stutthof concentration camp system was one of the Nazi war's crimes.
The horrific impact of war would never go unacknowledged. The Stutthof concentration camp is synonymous with suffering, cruelty, and worst of all, death. Located near the Baltic Sea in occupied Poland, this camp was one of the first Nazi concentration camps to be established outside of German borders and the last to be liberated by Allied forces. While the horrors inflicted by male SS officers are well documented, the role of female guards at Stutthof stands as a chilling reminder of how individuals, regardless of gender, became instruments of terror toward others. Will their cruelty be faced with a deserving punishment? Did they ever feel sorry for their inhumane act? Come with us as we explore the brutal execution of the female guards at Stutthof concentration camp, the Stutthof concentration camp. To understand the brutal execution of the female guards of Stutthof concentration camp, we have to know the inhumane environment they survived in. Stutthof was the earliest Nazi concentration camp established during World War II. This is located in a secluded, marshy and wooded area near the village of Stutthof, which is now known as Stutthof, 34 kilometers east of the city of Danzig, now Gdansk. This was built after the Nazi invasion of Poland and operated from September 2, 1939 until May 9, 1945, becoming the first concentration camp outside Germany's pre-war borders. Stutthof was primarily used to imprison Polish leaders and intelligentsia as part of the Nazi ethnic cleansing project. But over time, it grew into a vast complex of terror, ultimately claiming the lives of an estimated 63,000 to 65,000 people. Before the outbreak of World War II, the German Selbstschutz, a paramilitary organization in Pomerania, had already compiled lists of individuals they intended to arrest, focusing their target on Polish elites. As early as 1939, Nazi authorities were reviewing locations in the Danzig area to set up a concentration camp. When the war began on September 1, 1939, the decision was made to convert a civilian internment facility near Stutthof into a concentration camp. On September 2, 1939, Stutthof received its first prisoners, several 150 Poles and Jews arrested in Danzig. By September 15, 1939, the prisoner population had increased to 6,000. This act was administered by the Danzig police chief. Stutthof was under the control of civilian authorities until November 1941, when it became a labor education camp. In January 1942, Stutthof was converted into a full concentration camp and placed under the control of the German security police. The original camp, known as the Old Camp, covered an area of 120,000 square meters, that is 1,300,000 square feet. It was initially surrounded by a barbed wire fence and contained 8 barracks for prisoners and a kommandantur for the SS guards. The camp's size increased drastically in 1943 when a new section, referred to as the New Camp, was built next to the Old Camp. This new addition was surrounded by an electrified barbed wire fence and contained 30 more barracks, expanding the total area of the camp to 1.2 square kilometers, a square mile of 0.46. In 1943, Stutthof's capacity for murder expanded with the construction of a crematorium and a gas chamber. The gas chamber could terminate nearly 150 prisoners per execution. Mobile gas vans were also used to supplement the termination process when needed. These facilities were fully operational by June 1944, when Stutthof was incorporated into the Nazi final solution. Over its operation, Stutthof housed approximately 110,000 prisoners from 28 different countries. Early on, almost all of the prisoners were Poles, but as the war progressed, people from many nations were imprisoned in the camp. This included Jews, Germans, Czechs, Dutch, Belgians, French, Norwegians, Finns, Danes, Lithuanians, Latvians, Belarusians, Russians, and others. In 1944, Stutthof became a major destination for Jewish deportees. The first group of 2,500 Jewish prisoners arrived in July 1944 from Auschwitz. By the end of 1944, a total of 23,566 Jews, including 21,817 women, were transferred to Stutthof from Auschwitz. Additionally, 25,053 Jewish prisoners, including 16,123 women, were brought from camps in the Baltic states. Many of these prisoners were brought from the Baltic regions as Soviet forces advanced into German-occupied territories. The evacuation of inmates from camps like Kluge in Estonia to Stutthof led to further overcrowding and harsher conditions. Most of the prisoners were members of the Polish underground, civilians deported from Warsaw during the Warsaw Uprising, Lithuanian and Latvian intellectuals, Latvian resistance fighters, Soviet prisoners of war, psychiatric patients and political dissidents, including communists like Danish parliamentarian Martin Nielsen. The prisoners' life in Stutthof was characterized by extreme deprivation. Prisoners were subjected to brutal forced labor, starvation, disease, and inhumane living conditions. Typhus epidemics ravaged the camp during the winter of 1942 and again in 1944, making many prisoners meet their early death. Those too weak or sick to work were sent to the gas chambers or subjected to lethal injections of phenol. Prisoners were also executed by drowning in mud, being clubbed to death, or being shot. The first executions at Stutthof took place on January 11th and March 22, 1940. When 89 Polish activists and government officials were shot, gassings of the prisoners began in June 1944, and by the time the camp was evacuated in 1945, around 4,000 prisoners, including Jewish women and children, had been murdered in the gas chamber. An estimate between 63,000 and 65,000 prisoners died at Stutthof, with about 28,000 of them being Jews. As the war continued, Stutthof and its prisoners became increasingly needed for the Nazi war effort. Prisoners were forced to work in SS-owned businesses, such as the Deutsche Ausrüstungswerke, an armaments factory inside the camp. Inmates also labored in local brickyards, private industrial enterprises, agricultural projects, and the camp's workshops. In 1944, a Focke-Wulf aircraft factory was constructed at Stutthof to utilize the prisoners' labor. In addition to the main camp, a vast network of sub-camps was established. The Holocaust Encyclopedia estimates that there were 105 sub-camps of Stutthof scattered throughout northern and central Poland, with major sub-camps located in Torun and Elblag. As the Soviet army approached in early 1945, the Nazis began evacuating the camp. Tens of thousands of prisoners were forced on death marches in sub-zero temperatures. Many of the prisoners succumbed to exhaustion and exposure, or were shot by the SS guards during these forced evacuations. Stutthof was the last Nazi concentration camp to be liberated. On May 9, 1945, Soviet forces finally reached the camp. But by that time, much of the camp's infrastructure had been dismantled or destroyed. The majority of the prisoners had either been assassinated, evacuated, or died during the brutal conditions of the marches. It is estimated that about 24,600 prisoners were transferred from Stutthof to other locations during its operation. After the war, much of the camp's infrastructure was either destroyed or dismantled, but some buildings remained. In 1962, Stutthof was transformed into a memorial museum, preserving the memory of the atrocities committed there. The museum stands as a somber reminder of the horrors of the Holocaust and Nazi tyranny, bearing witness to the suffering endured by the prisoners of Stutthof. Now we know about Stutthof concentration camp. How did the female guards come in? Let's find out. The female guards in Stutthof concentration camp. While the male guards often took charge of the operation, the female staff at Stutthof concentration camp was comprised of German SS guards, and starting from 1943, Ukrainian auxiliaries who were brought in under the orders of SS Gruppenführer Fritz Katzmann, the higher SS and police leader for the area at the time. Katzmann played a pivotal role in implementing Nazi policies in occupied Poland and was responsible for bringing in reinforcements to manage the increasing camp population and labor demands. In 1942, the first female German SS guards, known as SS Aufseherinnen, arrived at Stutthof alongside female prisoners. Throughout the war, a total of 295 female guards worked across the Stutthof camp complex. These female guards played significant roles in overseeing the daily operations of the camp and in the mistreatment of prisoners. Their presence and actions had a profound impact on the experiences of those held at the camp. Among the female guards, they had notable personnel including Elisabeth Becker, Erna Beilhardt, Ella Bergman, Ella Blank, Gerda Bork, Herta Bothe, Erna Butcher, Hermine Becher-Bruckner, Steffi Brylowski, Charlotte Graf, Charlotte Gregor, Charlotte Klein, Gerda Steinhoff, Iwa Paradis, and Jenny-Wanda Barkmann. Out of these women, 34, including Becker, Bothe, Steinhoff, Paradis, and Barkmann, were later identified as having committed crimes against humanity. Many of these women were involved in the brutal treatment of prisoners and played active roles in the camp's atrocities. In June 1944, as the need for camp personnel became more dire due to the establishment of the women's subcamp Bromberg-Ost, Konzentrationslager Bromberg-Ost in Bydgoszcz, the SS began conscripting women from Danzig and the surrounding areas. This was a response to a severe shortage of guards at Stutthof, which was struggling to maintain control over its expanding prisoner population. In addition to the German and Ukrainian guards, several Norwegian volunteers from the Waffen-SS also served at Stutthof. Some worked as guards, while others acted as instructors for prisoners from Nordic countries. According to senior researcher Terje Embeland at the Norwegian Center for Studies of Holocaust and Religious Minorities, these Norwegian SS members contributed to the management and training efforts at the camp. Further highlighting the international involvement in the Nazi camp system, the administrative structure reflected the broader dynamics of the Nazi concentration camp system, which relied on a mixture of German SS personnel, auxiliaries, and conscripts from across Nazi-occupied Europe to maintain its operations and facilitate the mass extermination policies. From being an ordinary woman to being the youngest murderer committing one of the biggest crimes against humanity, does this lady deserve a pardon even if her time of cruelty was short? Let's find out. Elisabeth Becker. Born in July 1923, she was one of the ordinary women who became a cog in Nazi concentration camp and overseer during World War II. She played a dark role in the atrocities committed at the Stutthof concentration camp. Born in Neutyjek, Danzig, now Nowy Stor, Poland, she was raised in a German family. Her early life seemed typical for a young German girl during the rise of the Nazi regime. In 1936, at the age of 13, she joined the League of German Girls, Bund Deutscher Mädel, the female wing of the Hitler Youth, which indoctrinated young girls into Nazi ideology and prepared them for roles in support of the Nazi state. By 1938, Becker had begun working as a tramway conductor in the city of Danzig. 2 years later, in 1940, she took a job with the Dockendorf firm in her hometown of Neutyjek, remaining there until 1941, when she transitioned into agricultural work in Danzig. Her life followed the pattern of ordinary citizens until 1944, when the war began to exact an ever greater toll on the Nazi war machine. By 1944, as the tides of war turned against Germany, the SS found itself in need of more personnel to staff the ever-expanding network of concentration camps. That year, the SS began recruiting women from the surrounding regions, including Danzig, to serve as guards. Elisabeth Becker was among those called up. She reported to Stutthof concentration camp on September 5, 1944, where she began training as an SS Aufseherin, female overseer. This was a critical moment in her life, where she transitioned from civilian life to active participation in the Nazi machinery of death. At Stutthof, Becker was stationed in SK3, the camp section designated for female prisoners. It was here that she became personally involved in one of the most heinous aspects of camp operations, the selection process. This involved selecting prisoners, including women and children, for the gas chambers. The selections were an essential part of the camp's extermination process, designed to weed out those deemed unfit for labor who would be sent to their deaths. In this role, Becker participated in one of the most notorious aspects of the Holocaust. Despite her involvement in these atrocities, Becker's time at Stutthof was relatively brief. After working at the camp for just 4 months, Becker fled her post on January 15, 1945, As the Soviet army advanced through Eastern Europe, pushing Nazi forces into retreat, she returned to her home in Nutaic, seemingly hoping to evade responsibility for her actions. However, her brief escape from justice did not last long. On April 13, 1945, she was arrested by Polish police. With the war drawing to a close and the full scale of Nazi atrocities coming to light, Becker was held to account for her role in the genocide. Becker's trial was part of the first Stutthof trial, which took place in Danzig beginning on May 31, 1946. This trial was significant as it brought to justice not only male SS members, but also female overseers and capos prisoners, along with 4 other female SS overseers and several capos. Becker stood before the court to answer for the crimes committed under her watch. Despite the relative brevity of her service at Stutthof, her involvement in the selection of prisoners for the gas chambers weighed heavily against her. During the trial, she confessed to selecting at least 30 female prisoners to be gassed, though she later retracted the functionary's confession, perhaps in the hope of mitigating her punishment. The court deliberated on Becker's fate, noting that she had spent less time at Stutthof compared to her co-defendants. Because of this, the court recommended that her death sentence be commuted to 15 years in prison. Becker herself wrote several letters to Bolesław Bierut, the president of Poland, pleading for her sentence to be reduced. However, no clemency was granted, and the recommendation for commutation was rejected. On July 4, 1946, Elisabeth Becker's life came to a brutal and public end. She, along with her fellow condemned SS women and kapos, was executed by hanging at Biskupia Gorka, a hill near Gdansk, formerly Danzig. The execution was witnessed by a large crowd, and it served as a stark and symbolic moment in post-war Poland's reckoning with the horrors of Nazi occupation. Becker's involvement in the atrocities at Stutthof, brief as it was, sealed her fate as one of the many individuals who directly contributed to the Holocaust. Her life serves as a chilling reminder of how ordinary individuals, like a tramway conductor from Danzig, could become complicit in the machinery of genocide under the influence of the Nazi regime. Despite her youth and limited time at the camp, her actions at Stutthof left a legacy of suffering that she was held accountable for in the post-war trials that sought to bring justice to the victims of the Holocaust. They say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, but cruelty can be seen by all. Her beauty was an anguish to the prisoners. What inhumane act did this guard commit? Let's find out. Jenny-Wanda Barkmann, the beautiful spectre. The beautiful yet willing participation of genocidal activities, Jenny-Wanda Barkmann, born May 1922. She lived a short life as her life came to an end on July 4, 1946. She was a German overseer at Nazi concentration camps during World War II, whose brutality earned her notoriety and, ultimately, execution for crimes against humanity. Born in 1922, she's believed to have spent her early years in Hamburg, Germany. Little is known about her early life, but like many young German women, she found herself drawn into the Nazi regime's wartime machinery as the war escalated and Nazi ideology permeated every aspect of life in Germany. By 1944, as the need for camp personnel increased, Barkmann was recruited by the SS to serve as an Aufseherin, which means female overseer at Stutthof concentration camp, specifically in the SK3 women's subcamp in occupied Poland. This subcamp was one of the most brutal sections of Stutthof, where women and children faced severe mistreatment, forced labor, and mass extermination. Barkmann quickly gained a reputation for her cruelty. She was not only involved in the daily torment of prisoners, but also participated in the selection process, during which she personally selected women and children to be sent to the gas chambers. Her participation in these selections made her directly complicit in the mass murder of innocent lives. In addition to her role in selecting victims for the gas chambers, Barkmann also volunteered as a gunner at the camp, further intensifying her brutal image among prisoners. Her sadistic behavior was so feared and hated that the prisoners gave her the macabre nickname Beautiful Spectre, a chilling juxtaposition of her outward appearance and the horrifying actions she committed within the camp. The nickname highlighted the eerie contrast between her physical attractiveness and the cruelty with which she treated the prisoners under her control. As the Soviet army advanced through Eastern Europe in early 1945, Nazi forces began abandoning their concentration camps, and Stutthof was no exception. Sensing the inevitable collapse of the Nazi regime, Barkmann fled the camp in an attempt to escape justice. She managed to go into hiding in Gdansk, formerly Danzig, hoping to blend into the chaotic aftermath of the war. However, her freedom was short-lived. In May 1945, she was arrested at a train station in Gdansk by Polish authorities. Her attempts to evade consequences for her wartime crimes had failed, and she was taken into custody to await trial. In 1946, Jenny-Wanda Barkmann stood trial as one of the defendants in the first Stutthof trial held in Danzig. The trial marked one of the earliest attempts to bring Nazi war criminals to justice, and it specifically focused on the crimes committed at Stutthof concentration camp. Alongside other SS guards and camp functionaries, including several female overseers, Barkmann faced charges of crimes against humanity. The trial proceedings detailed the horrific acts she had committed at Stutthof, including her participation in the selection of prisoners for extermination and her sadistic maltreatment of inmates. During the trial, Barkmann displayed a notable lack of remorse. After being found guilty, she reportedly remarked, "Life is indeed a pleasure, and pleasures are usually short." This chilling statement reflected a cold detachment from the gravity of her actions and the immense suffering she had caused. Her words underscored the sense of impunity that many SS personnel felt during the war. But in the courtroom, it became clear that justice would be served. Jenny-Wanda Barkmann was sentenced to death for her crimes, along with several other defendants from the trial. On July 4, 1946, she was publicly executed by short drop hanging at Biskupia Gorka Hill near Gdansk. The execution was witnessed by a large crowd and served as a public demonstration of post-war Poland's commitment to holding war criminals accountable. Remarkably, former Stutthof prisoners volunteered to assist with the executions, underscoring the deep need for justice among the survivors of the camp. At just 24 years old, Barkmann met her fate on the gallows alongside 10 other convicted SS overseers and capos from Stutthof. Her youth and relative inexperience did not absolve her from the heinous acts she committed, and her execution was part of a broader effort to reckon with the horrors of the Holocaust and the atrocities perpetrated by Nazi functionaries across Europe. From a housemaid on a farm to an enforcer of the Nazi ideology, the next female guard lived up to Nazi ideology. Where did her dedication to the ideology lead her? Let's find out. Gerda Steinhoff, the zealous enforcer. Gerda Steinhoff's dedication to cruelty towards the prisoners made her a zealous enforcer of Nazi ideology. Born in January 29, 1922, Steinhoff took advantage of becoming a German SS overseer at Nazi concentration camps. She played a key role in the persecution and extermination of prisoners during World War II. Steinhoff's involvement in the atrocities committed at Stutthof and its subcamps eventually led to her conviction and execution for crimes against humanity. Born in Danzig-Langführ, Steinhoff grew up in what was then the Free City of Danzig, now Gdansk, Poland, a region marked by its complex ethnic tensions and shifting national identities in the years leading up to World War II. As a young woman, she took on typical jobs for her time and background. She worked as a housemaid on a farm in Tegenhagen near Danzig, and later as a bakery employee. By 1939, the year Nazi Germany invaded Poland, Steinhoff had secured a job as a tramway conductor in Danzig. However, the war would soon change the course of her life and lead her into the ranks of the SS. In 1944, at the age of 22, Steinhoff married and had a child. That same year, the Nazi regime intensified its efforts to recruit more guards, particularly women, to help manage its vast concentration camp system. Responding to this call, Steinhoff joined the SS and became a camp overseer at Stutthof, one of the most notorious concentration camps in occupied Poland. Her arrival at Stutthof marked the beginning of her active participation in the Nazi system of mass murder. On October 1, 1944, Steinhoff was promoted to the role of Blockleiterin, or a block leader in the SK3 women's camp at Stutthof. In this capacity, she was directly involved in the selection process, which determined the fate of prisoners. Steinhoff, along with other camp officials, would select those deemed unfit for labor primarily women and children, to be sent to the gas chambers. Her participation in these selections made her responsible for the deaths of countless innocent people. This ruthless role would only grow in importance as she quickly climbed the ranks within the SS. By October 31, 1944, Steinhoff's dedication to her work had earned her a promotion to SS Oberaufseherin, a senior overseer, a position that came with increased authority and responsibility. She was transferred to the Danzig-Holm subcamp, where her reputation for cruelty continued to grow. Known for her sadistic treatment of prisoners, Steinhoff demonstrated unwavering loyalty to the Third Reich, and her actions reflected a complete disregard for the lives of those under her supervision. In December 1944, Steinhoff was once again reassigned, this time to the Bromberg-Ost subcamp in Bydgoszcz, about 170 kilometers south of Danzig. By this point, the war was nearing its conclusion, but Steinhoff remained committed to her duties. On 25 January 1945, she was awarded a medal in recognition of her loyalty and service to Nazi Germany, a symbol of her status as a devoted member of the SS. The medal, while insignificant to the outside world, represented the Third Reich's approval of her role in their genocidal campaign as the Soviet army advanced through Poland, bringing the Nazi regime closer to collapse. Steinhoff fled Bromberg-Ost in a bid to escape capture and punishment. Like many other SS guards, she sought to return to her pre-war life, hoping to evade responsibility for her involvement in the atrocities. However, her flight from justice was short-lived. On May 25, 1945, just weeks after the war's end, Steinhoff was arrested by Polish authorities and imprisoned. Her trial was part of the first Stutthof trial, which began in 1946. Alongside other SS female staff and capos, Steinhoff faced charges of crimes against humanity for her role in the selection process and her brutal treatment of prisoners. Despite the gravity of the accusations against her, Steinhoff showed little remorse during the proceedings. She was noted for smiling and joking with her co-defendants throughout the trial, a disturbing display of detachment from the horrors she had inflicted. This lack of regret was emblematic of the chilling indifference exhibited by many Nazi officials who had become desensitized to the suffering they caused. The evidence against Steinhoff was overwhelming. Testimonies from survivors and documentation of her role in the gas chamber selections painted a clear picture of her complicity in the Holocaust. The court found her guilty, and she was sentenced to death for her involvement in the systematic extermination of prisoners and her sadistic maltreatment of those under her charge. On July 4, 1946, Gerda Steinhoff's life came to a grim end. She was publicly executed by short drop hanging on Biskupia Gorka Hill near Gdansk, along with 10 other convicted SS camp personnel. The executions were conducted in front of a large crowd, and former Stutthof prisoners volunteered to assist in the process, a symbolic moment of justice for those who had survived the camp's horrors. Steinhoff's execution was part of Poland's broader efforts to hold Nazi war criminals accountable for their actions during the Holocaust. The next guard said she had no choice but to do the evil she committed in Stutthof concentration camp. Is that true? Or did she just want to push the attention from herself? Let's find out. Herta Bothe, the sadist of Stutthof. Born in January 1921 in Teterow, Germany, she worked as a nurse and factory worker before becoming a camp guard, SS Aufseherin at Ravensbrück concentration camp in 1942, then later at Stutthof, where she gained notoriety for her brutal treatment of prisoners and earned the nickname Sadist of Stutthof. In 1945, she escorted prisoners on a death march to Bergen-Belsen, where she supervised a woodcutting brigade. After the camp's liberation, she was arrested and forced to bury corpses. At the Belsen trial, Bothe was sentenced to 10 years for her violent actions, including using a pistol on prisoners. Although she admitted to hitting prisoners, she denied more severe accusations, such as terminating anyone. Eyewitnesses testified to her involvement in deadly violence. She was released after serving 6 years in 1951. In a 1999 interview, Bothe defended her actions, claiming she had no choice but to work at the concentration camp or risk becoming a prisoner herself. This claim wasn't true, as there were cases of guards refusing to commit these crimes and were not imprisoned. She died in the year 2000 at the age of 79. Her chilling actions to prisoners is one that would never be unforgotten. But what was this chilling act? Let's find out. Ewa Paradies. Known for notoriety in brutalizing women and other prisoners, Ewa Paradies quickly met her fate when she was found guilty. Born on December 17, 1920, her life as a terror was cut short on July 4, 1946. She was one of the Nazi concentration camp overseers known for her cruelty during World War II. In August 1944, she arrived at the Stutthof SK3 camp to train as an Aufseherin, or overseer. After completing her training, she became a wardress, later moving to the Bromberg Ost subcamp, and finally returning to the main Stutthof camp in early 1945. In one of her final acts, she accompanied a transport of female prisoners to the Lauenburg subcamp before fleeing as the war neared its end. She was captured and brought to trial for her crimes. Paradies faced chilling accusations. One witness recounted a particularly horrific incident where she forced a group of female prisoners to strip in the freezing winter, doused them with ice-cold water, and brutally beat them if they moved. Such acts of cruelty, along with her role in the deaths of prisoners, led to her conviction. In 1946, Paradies was sentenced to death at the Stutthof trial. On July 4th, she was publicly executed by short-drop hanging on Biskupia Gorka Hill near Gdansk, alongside 10 other Stutthof guards and kapos. Paradies was the last of the women to be hanged, marking the end of her brutal legacy. Wanda Klaff. Her intelligence and dedication to cruelty and brutality speaks for her. She was born on March 6, 1922. Klaff was a Nazi concentration camp overseer who was executed for her crimes after World War II. Born in Danzig as Wanda Kalakinski, she came from a German family. After finishing school in 1938, she worked in a jam factory before marrying Willy Klaff in 1942. Initially a housewife, she later worked as a streetcar operator. Klaff joined the Stutthof concentration camp staff in 1944, first working at the Proust subcamp, where she was known for her abusive treatment of prisoners. She was later moved to the Russischen subcamp. As the war neared its end in early 1945, Klaff fled the camp, but was arrested by Polish officials on June 11, 1945. She fell ill with typhoid fever while in prison. During the Stutthof trial, Klaff's cold and detached demeanor stood out. She boasted, "I am very intelligent and very devoted to my work in the camps. I struck at least 2 prisoners every day." Her admission of daily violence, along with her participation in other brutal acts, led to her conviction. Klaff was sentenced to death for crimes against humanity. On July 4, 1946, at the age of 24, she was publicly hanged using the short drop method on Biskupia Gorka Hill near Gdansk, alongside other camp personnel. Her cruelty towards prisoners led to death at just 24, despite her intelligence. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, do like and share. Also, drop a comment and subscribe to the channel. Check out another interesting video by clicking on the video appearing on your screen right now. See you there.